In 1980, police in Ecuador arrested a man after a failed abduction in a marketplace. It seemed like a routine capture. But sitting in the interrogation room, Pedro Alonso Lopez calmly told police that he had murdered over 300 young girls. Up to that point, law enforcement across Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador had treated their missing persons reports as local, isolated events. They had no idea they were sharing a single, massive problem. When investigators tried to balance this claim of 300 victims against their local records, they found a complete void. They lacked any unified cross-border database to verify his story. A confession alone rarely secures a conviction of this magnitude. To prove the scale of his crimes, investigators desperately needed physical evidence to separate reality from a killer's morbid imagination. The police were suddenly holding a man claiming a death toll higher than anyone else in modern history, and their entire case rested on finding evidence that officially did not exist. Lopez was born in Colombia in 1948. Raised in extreme poverty and subjected to severe abuse, he developed a deeply predatory drive early in life. By the 1970s, he had honed a highly specific method. He exclusively targeted highly vulnerable young girls living in impoverished rural communities. Looking at the sprawling, isolated terrain of the Andes, it becomes clear how geography shielded him. Tracking a suspect across these mountains was nearly impossible. Instead of using immediate force, he gained his victims' trust. By luring them away quietly, he kept the local communities from sounding the alarm until it was entirely too late. His high death toll relied on a calculated exploitation of deep poverty and extreme geographical isolation. Back in 1980, police realized the only way to solve the case was to remove Lopez from the interrogation room and make him guide them through the landscape. Walking through the rugged terrain, Lopez began pointing out specific, hidden burial sites that local authorities had completely missed. Investigators spent weeks painstakingly exhuming these remote grave sites. This photograph captures the harrowing reality, showing officials carrying a recovered body out of the mountains. While he boasted of over 300 kills, investigators could legally confirm dozens of cases based strictly on what they pulled from the earth. It was this undeniable physical evidence, not his chilling confession, that legally secured his prosecution and earned him the title Monster of the Andes. With dozens of murders confirmed by forensic evidence, authorities expected him to be permanently removed from society, but they immediately hit a legal wall. In Ecuador at the time, the absolute maximum prison sentence for any crime was capped at exactly 16 years. This 16-year limit was completely inflexible. It applied regardless of how many graves investigators had discovered or the gruesome details of the evidence. The justice system simply lacked the legal framework to handle a case of this magnitude, turning a definitive investigative victory into a ticking clock. Because of that rigid limit, Lopez completed his mandatory sentence and was released from Ecuadorian prison in 1994. He was then transferred to Colombia for psychiatric care, but eventually he was released on bond. He briefly resurfaced as a suspect in a new case in 2002, before disappearing completely from public view. After dozens of murders were meticulously proven with physical evidence, a systemic blind spot allowed him to walk free. Today, his location remains completely unknown, leaving one of history's most disturbing cases with no true conclusion.